Ulster prepares for self-government, now the pressures on the IRA. Terror in church, 11 hurt by man wielding a sword. And Premiership all change as Leeds go top after beating Southampton.
From ITN, the ITV Weekend News with Nicholas Owen.
Good evening. Northern Ireland will take the first historic steps towards forming its own government tomorrow when Ulster Unionists and members of Sinn Féin will be appointed to share power on the new executive. The issue of IRA weapons is still hanging over the peace process. Today, the Northern Ireland Secretary Peter Mandelson said he believes disarmament will happen. John Irvine reports.
The stage is now set. It's many years since Parliament Building's Stormont has fulfilled the role for which it was intended, but next week it will once again be the seat of government in Northern Ireland. The trigger for the creation of this historic coalition was yesterday's vote by the Ulster Unionist Party in favour of the compromise negotiated with Republicans. The Unionists' agreement is, however, conditional. Their proviso is that their support for the new administration, and therefore its survival, will be dependent on the IRA beginning weapons decommissioning by February.
It's now a matter for Mr Adams and Mr Guinness and others to lead the Republican movement and ensure that they deliver on their side of the bargain, and I believe they will.
But Sinn Féin are angry about the Unionist proviso on disarmament. They say it amounts to an ultimatum that was not agreed.
And the Ulster Unionists, I think, need to reflect on this. They should not be doing anything which makes the achievement of decommissioning more difficult.
Last July there were farcical scenes inside the Stormont Parliament when Nationalists and Republicans were prepared to put forward their ministers, but the Unionist parties were not. Tomorrow this will happen for real, and whether they like it or not, and some won't, old enemies will become cabinet colleagues. John Irvine, ITN, Stormont.
Well, John, tomorrow another vital day in this peace process.
Absolutely. At some stage tomorrow, the Assembly will nominate ministers to a ruling cabinet, or executive as they call it here. And what an extraordinary coalition that will be. There are 10 portfolios to be shared out. There will be 5 Unionist ministers and 5 Nationalists, including 2 from Sinn Féin. I say that will happen at some stage tomorrow because there are plenty of Unionists in the Assembly who do not support Sinn Féin in government at this stage. So there may be a fair amount of acrimonious debate before the nomination of ministers actually happens.
And important events throughout this coming week, John.
Yes, on Tuesday and Wednesday the devolution order will pass through Westminster, then the transfer of power will take place from London to Belfast on Thursday. Then we will also have that announcement from the IRA of the appointment of a go-between to negotiate weapons decommissioning.
John Irvine in Belfast, thank you very much. Worshippers at a packed family church service in South London were subjected to a terrifying attack today by a naked man brandishing a sword. 11 people were injured. An off-duty policeman used a piece of organ piping to help overpower the man. From the scene, here's Eric McInnes.
St Andrew's Church at peace again. This morning it was so different. 400 parishioners reacted in horror when the attacker barged in armed with a samurai sword and a knife. He was naked and began slashing at people indiscriminately. Amid the commotion, acts of heroism. An off-duty policeman used a pipe from the church organ to overwhelm him. Another parishioner helped pin him down with a large cross.
I was very scared, but one feels obliged to try and protect people and limit the damage as much as possible.
Luckily, dozens of children were safe in the church hall next door. There was widespread panic and confusion among the parishioners. This woman's husband was slashed across the neck and shoulder.
When I saw him bleeding so heavily, he cut his jacket, his raincoat.
At evening mass, rescheduled at the local Salvation Army Hall, parishioners prayed for the injured. 6 of them, the most seriously wounded, some of them elderly, remain in hospital. Tonight, police have confirmed that a 26-year-old local man is being questioned about the attack that took place here. Eric McInnes, ITN, at St Andrew's Church in Thornton Heath.
Lord Archer is tonight facing damaging new allegations about his libel victory over the Daily Star newspaper 12 years ago. Michael Stackpool, who was asked by Lord Archer to give money to a prostitute, claims the millionaire author later paid him to go abroad so he could not give evidence. Lord Archer's spokesman says today's allegations are unsubstantiated. Leading figures from the motor industry are being called to a special summit tomorrow, at which they'll be told the government's not against car drivers. The Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott said today more money could be found for building new roads. Lauren Taylor has the details.
Although John Prescott is famous for his own use of Jaguar cars, the government has been suffering from suggestions that it's anti-motorist. Tomorrow he'll meet key figures in the motor industry to reassure them. He argues that money from fuel taxes can now be used for road schemes.
So I have always considered there could be more roads, but I'm waiting for those studies to come in, and then the money will be available.
Motoring organisations welcome what Mr Prescott himself has called a gear change.
The root of our problem in transport is a quarter century of investing half what we see our European neighbours investing. And this is what this programme, we hope, is going to put right.
The Tories have long tried to make political mileage out of portraying Mr Prescott as anti-car. The meeting here is clearly designed to shake off that image. But the government is still committed to reducing car use, and environmental campaigners argue that Mr Prescott should not be pushed off course by trying to appease motorists. Lauren Taylor, ITN, at the Department of Transport.
Football, Leeds United are back top of the Premiership tonight after a 1-0 victory over Southampton. Louise Port rounds up all the day's action.
They left it late, but Leeds are back on top of the Premiership after this Michael Bridges goal in injury time gave Leeds a 1-0 win over Southampton at Elland Road. 2 minutes earlier, Patrick Collitor had been sent off for his second bookable offence, and Leeds took advantage of the visitors being reduced to 10 men. Chelsea beat Bradford at Stamford Bridge by the same 1-0 scoreline. This Tory Andre Flo goal after just 15 minutes was all that separated the two teams. But some think it should have been 2. Matt Clark was adjudged to have stopped the ball crossing the line, but it's a close call. At St James's Park, Newcastle beat Spurs 2-1, Nikos Davizas sealing the points with this winner. And Arsenal move up to third in the league after victory over Derby. They came from behind to win 2-1, Thierry Henry getting a goal in each half. Louise Port, ITN Sport.
Confirmation then of today's results. Chelsea 1, Bradford 0, Arsenal 2, Derby 1, Leeds 1, Southampton 0 and Newcastle 2, Tottenham 1. A look at the Premiership table. Leeds are now top with Arsenal in third place. Tottenham and Chelsea are 7th and 8th. Highlights of today's 2 Scottish Premier League matches can be seen in Scotland straight after this programme, so look away now if you don't want to see the scores. England's cricketers are licking their wounds after their heavy defeat in the first test against South Africa today. England were on 260 when the final wicket of Alan Mullally fell to Sean Pollock. South Africa won by an innings and 21 runs. And finally, Sir Cliff Richard had the last laugh today when his single Millennium Prayer went to number 1. It was announced on one of the many radio stations that hadn't been keen to play it.
Well, I have to say it is quite incredible. Sir Cliff Richard is number 1 on the Pepsi chart, and he's defied his critics yet again with a Millennium Prayer.
It features the words of the Lord's Prayer to the tune of Auld Lang Syne and is Sir Cliff's 14th number 1. That's the ITV Weekend News. I'll be back with the ITV Evening News at 6:30 tomorrow. Good night. Have a good week.
Hello, good evening. Well, whilst many northern parts of Britain have had a day of torrential rain and gales, the southeast has been dry and bright. But the woolly boot will be on a different foot tomorrow. The north will be a lot brighter, while the south and east gets cloud and outbreaks of rain. Today then, the radar pictures from early this morning show endless hours of rain across northern parts today. There's been lots of localised flooding, gale force winds continuing to make driving conditions very difficult if you're out on the roads late tonight. But that weather front is going to move south and east as we go through the night, across Wales and the Midlands through this evening and tonight, so outbreaks of rain in many southern counties later tonight. The further north you are, the skies will begin to clear, still a scattering of showers. They'll be turning wintry on the hills in the far north. Temperatures there low enough for some icy patches on the roads, so do mind how you go. And then tomorrow morning, the south generally cloudy with outbreaks of rain and drizzle as the front finally arrives there. As we go through the day, it'll move away very, very slowly, the far southeast taking most of the day to brighten up. But elsewhere, a much, much better day tomorrow, generally dry with some sunshine too. And temperatures typically around 8 or 9 at best. 9 is the high 40s. Good night.
Powergen. Power, whatever the weather.
Sun Life, sponsors of the Meridian weather, helping you plan for tomorrow.
Unsettled tonight with outbreaks of rain spreading from the west and reaching many parts of the region before the end of the night. Winds will become fresh to strong and southerly in direction, so remaining fairly mild with a low of 9 Celsius. Mostly cloudy tomorrow, but it should remain dry with 1 or 2 brighter spells. Less windy with a high of 11 Celsius.